Hi viewers, welcome to the Grammar Channel. Today we are listening to a story, to a lesson, Ranga's Marriage. Ranga's Marriage, written by Masti Venkatesha Iyengar. He was born on 6th June 1891 in Hosahalli, Bangalore, and he was educated in University of Madras, awarded with Jnanapith Award, and he died on 6th June 1986. The story Ranga's marriage dates back to the early days of British rule when life in villages was slow and child marriage was quite common. It very interestingly shows the manipulations done by the narrator to bring a change in the idealistic views of Ranga about marriage and gets him married to a 11-year-old girl, Ratna. Due to the narrator's meticulous planning with a village astrologer, Ranga ultimately gets married to Ratna, with whom he had fallen in love on first sight. Let's move on to the characters. The main character, Ranga, is the son of an accountant, gets educated outside his village at Bangalore. But he has not changed much when he returns, as he follows the traditional courteous behavior towards elders. However, Ranga's views about marriage are non traditional. The narrator's strategies succeed in making Ranga agree to the traditional arranged marriage. Shyama, the narrator of this story, he is Ranga's neighbor. He is impressed by Ranga's cultured behavior and he plans a strategy, takes the village astrologer into confidence, and finally makes Ranga agree to marry a 11-year-old orphan Ratna. About Ratna, she is an 11-year-old orphan girl staying with her uncle Rama Rao. She's pretty and she sings very well, sweetly. She also knew how to play the veena and the harmonium. She impresses Ranga so that he changes his views on marriage. The Shastri, he is a village astrologer. He plays his role to perfection as tutored by Shyama, but he does not want to be treated shabbily and tries to assert his knowledge of the Shastras when Shyama tried to make fun of him. About the lesson, Ranga's marriage. This chapter is all about life in villages where child marriage is still a common practice. It is an interesting story of how a person manipulates to get a young boy married to a 11-year-old girl. It revolves around a boy named Ranga, an accountant's son who returns back from Bangalore after 6 months, having completed his higher studies. A huge crowd of people gathers around his home to see whether there are any changes occurred in him or not, and to see how fluently he speaks in English. People even start touching him to make sure that he is not changed. When the narrator meets him and asks him about his view of marriage, to his surprise, Ranga has a different view of marriages. According to him, one should get married to a girl who was matured enough to understand the things, and the couple should look good together. Now, the summary. First, we'll move on to the village of Hosahalli. The narrator mentions that this village is very small and it is not mentioned in geography books. Still, he speaks highly about Hosahalli. Even the local doctor, Gundabhatta, who has visited many places outside India, finds it an impressive village. The village is famous for its sour mangoes and creepers growing in the village pond. The leaves of this creeper could serve as good plates for serving afternoon meals. The narrator Shyama says that a real appreciation of the village can be felt only if one visits it personally and gets acquainted with it. Ranga's homecoming was a great event. Shyama recalls an incident that happened 10 years ago. The village accountant was the first one to gather enough courage to send his son to Bangalore to study. Not many people knew English then. That was why Ranga's homecoming was a great event. A big crowd went to greet him. The narrator rushed to see him. Everyone was surprised to see that Ranga had not changed a bit. Once they realized that Ranga was unchanged, the crowd of people slowly disappeared. Only The narrator continued to stand there. Ranga had a smile on his face. He still followed the rituals of his caste by respectfully touching the narrator's feet. Now, the narrator decides to get Ranga married. The same afternoon, Ranga went to the narrator's house with a couple of oranges in his hand. The narrator thought that such a fine and generous boy should get married and settled soon. He inquired about his plan to get married. Ranga said he did not want to get married soon. He was searching for the right girl who was matured enough, and he wanted to marry a girl he admired. He was not in favor of the arranged marriages prevalent in society. Till he got a girl of his choice, he wanted to remain a bachelor. The narrator was distressed to learn about Ranga's views on the marriage, but he made up his mind that very soon he would get Ranga married. The narrator found a suitable girl for Ranga. The narrator found the most suitable girl for him. It was Ramarao's niece Ratna, a pretty girl, 11-year-old, who had come to stay with him after her parents died. She was from a big town, so she knew how to play the veena and the harmonium. She also had a sweet voice. The narrator now starts playing a matchmaker role. The next morning, narrator told Ramarao's wife to send Ratna to his house to fetch some buttermilk. Ratna knew the narrator as he was a frequent visitor to Ramarao's place. Ratna came to the narrator's house. When she came, he requested her to sing a song. It was Friday, so she was wearing a sari. Ranga's disappointment. Meanwhile, Ranga came to the narrator's house and stopped at the threshold. He did not want the singing to stop, but he was curious to see the singer. He was enchanted by her and kept glancing at her. After a while, Ranga asked about Ratna. The narrator quite cunningly told him that she was married a year ago. Ranga was extremely disappointed to hear this. The narrator noticed signs of disappointment on Ranga's face, and Ranga left after some time. Now the narrator's plan. Next morning, narrator met the astrologer, better known as Shastri, and tutored him about his plan in Ranga's case. In the afternoon, the narrator met Ranga, who appeared as disturbed as he was yesterday. The narrator suggested meeting Shastri and inquiring about what was worrying him. Ranga did not protest and went to meet Shastri with the narrator. Shastri pretended to be surprised and spoke about meeting the narrator after a long time. The narrator almost ruined his own plan by saying that he had already met Shastri that very morning, but Shastri saved it by changing the sentence. The narrator told Shastri that something was worrying poor Ranga and they had come to seek his help. After making a pretense of some calculations, Shastri said that it was about a girl. To the narrator's question as to who that girl was, Shastri said that she had the same name of something found in the ocean: Kamala, moss, pearl, or ratna, the precious stone. The narrator's plan succeeds. The narrator's plan was bearing fruit. There was some surprise on Ranga's face, even some happiness too. On their return, Shama passed in front of Ramarao's house. Ratna was standing at the door. The narrator went inside Ramarao's house and came back a little later. He had a surprised look on his face. He told Ranga that there was something wrong information given to him. Some wrong information was given to him saying Ratna was not actually married. He also inquired of Ranga whether what Shastri had indicated was true. Shama asked Ranga that he was thinking about Ratna. Ranga admitted that whatever Shastri said about the girl was true. Now he wanted to get married to Ratna. Ranga and Ratna get married. Finally, they got married. All the idealism of Ranga was forgotten as he was totally fascinated by Ratna's beauty and her sweet voice. They named their first child Shyama because of Shyama's efforts. They had got married. Now, we move on to the highlights of the lesson Ranga's marriage. This story deals with the marriage of Ranga, a native of village Hosahalli, who had returned after being educated in Bangalore. Hearing of Ranga's return, the villagers came to find out whether Ranga had changed due to studying in a city school. To their surprise and pleasure, he was the same Ranga who was treating everyone with respect. In the afternoon, during Ranga's visit to Shyama's house, he asked Ranga about his plans for marriage. Ranga replied that the first he must find the right girl whom he admired and who would be matured enough. Shyama was unhappy that who could prove to be a good husband had decided to remain a bachelor at present. So Shyama made up his mind that, irrespective of Ranga's opinion about marriage or his decision to remain a bachelor, he would try his best to get Ranga married as quickly as possible. Shyama knew a 11-year-old orphan girl Ratna, who was his neighbor Ramarao's niece and stayed with him at present. The girl was beautiful, with a sweet voice. She could play musical instruments, veena and harmonium well. Shyama chopped out a plan to let Ranga meet the girl, see her himself, by inviting Ranga to come to his home when Ratna was called there on purpose. When Ratna came to Shyama's house, he requested her to sing so that when Ranga arrived, he could hear her. Ranga was impressed with her singing as well as her beauty and inquired about her. Shyama lied to Ranga by telling him that she was already married, which disappointed Ranga. Next day, Shyama tutored the village astrologer known as Shastri to speak as Shyama wanted when Ranga was brought to him. Ranga, meanwhile, was looking sad, and so Shyama suggested to him that they should consult Shastri to find out what was worrying him, to which Ranga immediately agreed. Shastri pretended to make some calculations and declared that a girl was responsible for Ranga's condition and her name was something found in the ocean like Kamala, Pearl, or Ratna, and so on. Shyama mentioned that Ratna, whom they knew, was already married, but the astrologer stuck to his words. Returning from Shastri's house, the narrator stopped at Rama Rao's house, went inside for some time, then returned. He pretended to look surprised and told Ranga that just now he had found that Ratna was not married and the earlier information was incorrect. He now asked Ranga whether what Shastri had indicated was true. Ranga admitted that whatever Shastri said was true and he wanted to get married to Ratna. So Ranga and Ratna got married, naming their first child the same name as that of the narrator, as he was the one responsible for them being happily married.